My name is MacKenzie Bailey. I'm the Policy Program Coordinator with the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association, also known as OEFFA for short. Thank you for joining me today to discuss taking action on the FDA's proposed produce standards and preventative controls rule. All right, here in front of you is the agenda for this evening. First up, I'd like to acknowledge the Cuyahoga Valley Countryside Conservancy for providing today's webinar technology. I'd also like to thank the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition for providing so many resources on the proposed rules, and many of which I've included in this presentation today. After this slide, I will discuss a brief background to this webinar and some of the logistics. And after which, we'll start getting into the nitty-gritty, and we'll discuss the importance of taking action, followed by some of the major issues in the rules to address in the rules. Oh. Hold on, I'm having a minor issue here again. All right, I think we're back on track here. After we talk about some of the major issues, we'll then talk about how to take action and personalize your story. And then finally, how to submit comments. Towards the end of the call, I'll provide you with some additional resources and answer questions. This is the second webinar in a two-part series. Last month, Ariane Lottie from the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition provided an in-depth overview of the Produce and Preventative Controls Rule. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to watch this webinar. However, if you have not, it is available online and can be viewed by following the bit.ly link there on your screen. The goal for today's call is to give you the tools you need to formulate individual comments that address major issues and walk you through the process of submitting comments online. During the registration for this webinar, many of you shared what information would be helpful to you. I reviewed each of your responses and tried to incorporate as many of the answers as I could in the presentation. You will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the call. And I'll also be providing you with my contact information if you need to reach me at a later date. Again, I'll take questions at the end of the presentation, and your phone will be on mute until that point in time. Following this webinar, finally, this webinar is recorded and will be available on the OEFFA website. So let's talk about why it's important to take action on these proposed rules. For starters, everyone has a role in ensuring safe food, and food safety should be an important part of any grower or processor operation. Despite that, the rules will have an adverse impact, as proposed, will have an adverse impact on beginning and transitioning farmers, as well as diversified and organic farmers. It could also impact projects aimed at increasing food access and local farmers markets. And those impacts are due to overly burdensome regulations like strict water testing requirements, debilitating annual costs associated with the compliance of these rules, and the discouragement of certain organic practices like restricting the use of natural fertilizers. And because of the potential impacts, it's really important to make comments. In fact, today, you can make a difference by making a comment, and from today all the way until November 15th, and that's only 2 weeks away. So we're coming up close to the deadline. The rules are still in draft form, which is the good news, because the #1 best way to make changes and to improve the rules is to comment on them, and we have the ability to do that still. The FDA is legally required to seek public input, and they'll read every comment that's submitted. If you grow food, process food, or just eat food, you are a stakeholder in this process, and your voice really does count. I think one of the biggest deterrents to commenting is that people are afraid or think their voice doesn't matter, and really it very much does. Already 1,000 comments have been submitted, but there need to be more. And you don't have to be an expert either. You just need to relay your concerns about the rules and how they'll impact you. And if something's not clear, you can even ask questions. This is also an opportunity to ask clarifying questions. So let's talk about some of the changes that are needed. Really at the top of this list is costs. This is a concern both in the produce and the preventative controls rules. The cost of compliance disproportionately affects small farmers. According to FDA's economic analysis of the produce rule, they estimate the annual percent of sales will cost a very small farmer 6% of their total sales. And this is in contrast with only 1% of total sales spent on large operations. The FDA also says that some of farmers will go out of business and be forced to seek off-farm employment. I'll look at the numbers here to provide some insight on that. Farmers that own a small farm, that's those operations that make between $250,000 or $250,000 and $500,000 in gross sales, and they take home an average, according to figures from 2011, about 10%. So they're taking home somewhere between $25,000 a year and $50,000 a year. And according to FDA, a farm in this category should expect nearly $13,000 in annual costs of compliance. So our recommendation to FDA here is simple: to decrease costs, and especially for new and small operations. Another issue surrounding this is the process for exemptions and modified requirements. This too is a concern in both rules. There is no clear process, including no requirement to have proof of a food safety problem before withdrawing a farm or facility's exemption or modified requirement status. This could potentially subject them to the full weight of the standards and its associated costs. Additionally, there's no clear process on how to get that status back. And our recommendations to FDA would be to require credible and substantial evidence to justify a withdrawal. And then the FDA should also establish a clear and just process for reinstating a farm or facility's exempt or modified requirement status. All right, here on farm diversification could be discouraged in certain operations like grain, dairy, livestock, if the rules are to stay the same. And this is because these operations are not otherwise covered under the produce or preventative controls rules. So, for example, a beef cattle operation with a side strawberry operation that brings in under $25,000 in sales for produce, they would still be required to meet the full produce standards due to their whole farm revenue being over $500,000. And so our recommendation to FDA is that they should only account for the value of regulated products and or produce. One issue specific to the produce standards is the biological soil amendments. The proposed produce standards make it difficult to use natural fertilizers like manure and compost, and they conflict with the established standards under the National Organic Program. The Food Safety Modernization Act specifically states that rules should not conflict with the organic standards, and so this is something that the FDA really needs to re-examine. And in a recent survey conducted by the Washington State Department of Agriculture suggests the majority of producers using compost and untreated manure in organic production would be affected due to their inability to rotate crops and introduce biological diversity because of this standard. Therefore, we're recommending that the standards are in line with the National Organic Standard and that it requires a 120-day at most interval between raw manure application and harvest. Another issue specific to the produce rule is the requirement to conduct weekly water testing on farms if they're getting water from creeks, streams, or rivers. And that's much more often than farmers are asked to test now. FDA's estimates are the cost for one test to be $87.30, which could add up to a couple $1,000 during a growing season. And so our recommendation is that the FDA not require weekly testing and instead require a farmer to collect monthly baseline information in the first growing season to inform future actions and frequencies for testing on those results. Also, the FDA should not allow treatment for irrigation water with chemicals. All right, the final issue I'm going to raise on this webinar is specific to the preventative controls dealing with the low-risk processing. Farmers adding value to their crops through low-risk processing should not be subject to the same rules as high-risk processing activities by large corporations. The preventative rules does include a good list of low-risk value-added processing, but it needs to be more comprehensive and expanded to include foods like pickles, salsas, and baked goods. All right, so now that we know some of the top concerns, getting into the actual commenting process here, if you're going to submit your comments, you'll want to include some basic information about yourself and your operation, expand how the rules may affect you and your community. If you're a farmer or a processor, talk about the steps that you'll take to have already ensured food safety on your operation. Be specific. Tell the FDA that you'd like to see changes in the rules. If you're already practicing an alternative method, you can include that and suggest that. While you're further researching these rules, if something's not clear to you, this is, you're able to ask questions here, and it's good to let the FDA know when standards need to be clarified. So, feel free to ask questions. If you want to gather some ideas, take a look at what other people have been saying. You can see the published comments, the comments that have been published so far. And I've provided here 2 bit.ly links for you at the bottom of this slide, one for the produce standards, one for the preventative controls. And then just one last note, your comments don't have to be very long. This shouldn't be an overly burdensome process for you, but it can be as long as you want at the same time. Just long enough to get your points across. So once you've completed your written comments, you're ready to submit them. And you have the option of submitting them online or by mail. If you choose to submit comments offline, you can send them to the FDA's Division of Docket Management in Maryland. And here on your screen you can see there's the full address. Comments can be handwritten or can be typed. And either way, you should include the following information that you see here on your screen. Your name, your organization or company name if it's applicable to you, your docket number, and you can see the docket numbers here at the bottom. You would include the full number there for the produce rule or the preventative controls rule. Whether you're submitting comments online or offline, you will need to submit a separate copy of your comments for each rule, although you can mail them in the same envelope. You just have to make sure that you include a separate copy for directed towards which rule you're commenting on, but they can be sent in at the same time to save on postage. Also, note the FDA does state that once they receive comments, they can post them without edit to Regulationsgov, and that could potentially include personal information. So if you're sending in handwritten comments or by mail, just note that. And that is different than the online process. If you submit them electronically, your personal information is kept private. All right, so now for the fun part, submitting online comments. Here I've provided you with some direct links on the slide. The first one you see here is regulations.gov. This is where you can look up your commenting, your docket by the docket number. It'll give you access to the rules themselves, other people's comments, some more support materials, as well as this is where you can make comments. To simplify things, I have, and a few people have asked this in the response, I've created a shortcut which will take you directly to the commenting box. And so you can use those links. I will have the webinar recording available soon, and hopefully, my technology permitting, I'm hoping tomorrow. And then you'll be able to get access to these links again. In terms of hold on, one more technology issue. All right, here we go. In terms of submitting them online, I'm going to start from the very beginning of the process. I'll let you know when that shortcut links in. But here you can see at number 1, regulations.gov. That's step number 1. You type that in, it'll bring you to this page. And here you'll go to step number 2. You'll type in the docket number. Again, that's provided for you on this screen here. And then click search, and it'll bring you to this screen. And hopefully things are keeping up with me pretty quickly over there. I'll try to slow down because sometimes there's a little bit of lag. But on this screen here, you can actually explore other items related to the produce rule. But if you want to make comments, just click right on that box where it says Comment Now, where you see number 4 highlighted, and then proceed to the next screen. Here, you are actually ready to start writing in your comments. So if you use the short link that I provided for you earlier, this is the page that it'll link to directly. And you can type in your comments, and you can attach files here. Files are not required to be attached, but as you'll note, there's only 5,000 characters available, and so you can simply attach your comments as a file if you go over that 500 character mark, 5,000 character mark. And then once you have entered them and loaded all the files you want, you can scroll down this page and you will see this. This is where you enter your personal information, so your first name and your last name. As you can see, I said MacKenzie Bailey here, and then there's 2 optional boxes that you can check off. You can choose to provide your personal contact information, your zip code, and your email address. This will be kept private, and it's a good idea to enter your information so that the FDA can contact you if they need to, but you don't have to. And also, if you are submitting on behalf of a third party here, you can check off this box as well. And then here you can see you'd enter the submitter's representative and then what the organization's name is. Finally, everybody will have to select a category under step number 7. And some of the categories could be food industry or individual consumer. That's probably the one that folks on this call will be using most. And then finally, on to step number 8, you push continue. And here's your preview screen. Here you can review all of the information that you had submitted so far. And if there's anything inaccurate, you can, under number 9 here, either edit, or if everything looks good, you can go ahead and submit your comment. And then finally, to confirm that your comment has been submitted, you will see this screen. This is your receipt, and there's the track number here. And I suggest recording that if you can, in case that you have to go back and reference your comments in the future. And finally, just some final writing tips. Be specific. The more specific and direct you are, the better the FDA will be able to respond. They need to know specifically what they can fix. And the more specific you are, the better they'll be able to respond. Relate your comments to your own personal story, who you are, why you care, how you'll be impacted. And if possible, back your comments up with data. But remember, you're not an expert, and so it's okay if you don't have data to back up everything that you're saying as well. If there's something that is not clear, ask for clarification. And I think I had mentioned that before. This is a place where you can be asking questions. Also, you are allowed to submit multiple comments, but once comments are submitted, you cannot edit them. If you do need to make a correction, make a new comment and reference your previously submitted one. So again, that's where the tracking number may come in handy. And then save a copy of your comments just in case. And if you're having technical difficulties with the website, you can contact the Regulationsgov help desk directly at that number there listed on the screen. And then just finally, there are a ton of resources online to help you through the process. Here you can see a direct link to OEFFA's food safety page, as well as the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition page. And then finally, the FDA's page on FSMA. And if you need any help in the commenting process between now and when you submit your comments, you're welcome to contact me directly. I also plan on following up with all the folks that attended the call with a follow-up email. Hopefully we'll get you a copy of recording, if not the slides, and then finally I'll be providing you with a commenting guide that you can use and help you in the process even more. So I'm going to